sure she'd have dinner ready by dark, and make sure that we're back home by dark. And I remember one of the funny things, we'd go fishing, and when it was kind of time to get back to the house, we had what we called, my brother and I would call it the three cast rule. And so, all right, we need to get back to the house. We got three more casts. If you don't catch any fish, we're going to go back to the house. But if you catch a fish, then the three cast rule starts over. And there's several times that we were 20, 30 minutes late that we'd get in trouble for getting back to the house late. But it was a great place to grow up. It's been in our family. Mom and dad moved there in the 70s, and dad was able, I call him my Uncle Jack, but it was really my dad's uncle, Jack Langdon, bought the original acreage. I think it was about 600 acres in 1970. And then mom and dad moved here from the Panhandle and started working for my Uncle Jack, or my dad's Uncle Jack. And then over the years, mom and dad were able to acquire extra land, a neighbor's property or something would come up for sale. And we're able to acquire that and add to the ranch. And, we had a lot different lifestyle growing up with mom and dad, my brother and I, than what I would say the average lifestyle is today. I mean, we had chores and we helped around the ranch as much as we could. And mom and dad were really penny pinching. I mean, we didn't do a lot of families now. Oh, where's our summer vacation going to go? Or we've got our winter break. Where are we going for winter break? That kind of stuff. We didn't do any of that kind of stuff. Mom and dad, every extra dime or penny they had went into that ranch, buying extra land. I mean, even as far as going out to dinner. I mean, my wife and our kids were going to run to dinner somewhere after this. When I was growing up, it was a special treat if we ran in to go get a hamburger at Whataburger or something like that. It was, they didn't have the disposable income like a lot of families have now. They put everything they had into that ranch. And, I'm really, really proud of them for doing that. We wouldn't be where we are today without the sacrifices that my mom and dad have made. That being said, those sacrifices, it's unless you just have a giant place, it's really hard to make a living for a family on, 1,000-acre size piece of property. You're not going to make a full living trying to sell running a cow-calf operation or trying to grow row crops or anything like that. And so when you have these, what I consider smaller sized farms and ranches, you have to have some sort of other enterprises to help supplement your income, whether, I know other people that have ranches that they still run cows and that kind of stuff, but hey, maybe the wife goes in and has a teaching job or something like that, or maybe the husband maybe he's a lineman for the county and works the ranch after he gets up. A lot of times it's not just a 9-to-5 job. You go do your 9-to-5 job and then get off that work and then go take care of the ranch after. And that's what it is for a lot of people. And for us, when I was growing up, mom boarded horses for the public. And so, they first started out at the farmhouse where they still live now. There's a barn there. And so dad built a few stalls there and kind of got mom's feet wet on, hey, let's see if this is going to work and see if anybody wants to keep a horse out there. And pretty soon they outgrew that. And dad ended up building, it's a 20-stall horse barn on the ranch. And so for years and years, mom boarded horses, and that's kind of what helped pay the bills and help get my brother and I through school and that kind of stuff. And you still have to do that today. Like I was talking about, you have to have other enterprises. It's really tough to just make it doing farming and ranching only. And so now I was talked earlier that I live on the ranch. My brother and his wife they live on the ranch, but both of them have outside jobs where they have that. I still work full time for my mom and dad. And then Kristen and I, we started a kind of a wedding venue business on the ranch. And that helps supplement the income that I make working full time for mom and dad. And then I've also we have part of the ranch's high fence. And so I've started raising trophy whitetail deer and have done some deer hunting and that kind of stuff. and mom and dad retired from boarding any horses, and actually the very last horse that we had boarded out there, we had some very special friends that became friends of mom and dad's and mine when from the horses that they had. And when mom shut her doors to boarding horses, these people were able to convince her to move her horses back. And so she had a couple that she was taking care of, and that last horse passed away recently. So the horse barn, the big 20 stall horse barn, had kind of been abandoned and is kind of used for storage. And I recently built one of the horse stalls and the run. I built the flight pen and raising some quail out there. And so I might try to kick around the idea about dabbling and doing some quail hunts and bird hunts and that kind of stuff. But like I said, you have to have those other enterprises to be able to survive on the ranch. Uh, and then my main talk today is about conservation easements. And I've got a couple videos that I'm going to show you. Dave talked about that I was on the Farm Bureau board. I'm their president now, but I was vice president before. And then when mom and dad put our conservation easement with the Texas Agricultural Land Trust on our ranch in December of 2021. And after that, when they did that, we met with Chad Ellis, the CEO, came out and mom had talked about putting the ranch. She wanted to figure out a way to protect it and make sure that it didn't get sold in the future, or not necessarily not get sold, but didn't want it getting chopped up and didn't want more houses or housing developments built on it. And so we started kicking the idea around about a conservation easement. And for years, she always was, well, I don't know if we should do this, or she wanted to do this. And I don't even know if they'll allow it with, we've got some gas exploration on the place. And so we have some pad sites and that kind of stuff. And one day I finally just said, Mom, instead of always just talking about it, why don't you call somebody at the Texas Ag Land Trust and see if they'll come out and sit down, or see if you even qualify. If the ranch doesn't qualify, then we don't even need to be going down that avenue. And so that's what we did. And it became almost instantly made friends with the people from Texas Agricultural Land Trust, and just felt really at home with them. And that's who we ended up using for the easement on our place. And I've got a couple videos real quick that the Texas Agricultural Land Trust did. And one of them is their first video that they ever produced. And it kind of gives the history of how the Texas Ag Land Trust, or TALT, got started. And so I'll play that. And it's got Mrs. Fitzsimmons, who is the kind of the founder of TALT. She's the narrator of the video. And then after that video, I'll show you a video that they did on our particular place. So I'm going to hit play, and they're not very long. They're just a few minutes long here. So that was the video that Talt first produced to kind of just give you a back history on Talt, and then some of the ranches that place easements on their place, they'll do a video of them, and here's the one that they did on Fall Creek Ranch. So that's the video that Talk did on us, and so I'll keep going with my presentation here. Miss Blair Fitzsimmons in her video talked about that you can't depend on the government to take care of Texas. It's primarily owned. Texas is primarily owned by private individuals, or private lands make up 81% of the land in the state, and that's about 139 million acres that are all either farms, ranches, or forest land. And then the rest is parks or that kind of stuff. But that's one thing great about Texas is it's private property laws, and we need to look. Blair Fitzsimmons said we're winning a race that we don't want to win, and what she means by that is like what are the trends happening in Texas, and this is all of these figures are just what I've Googled up. Just a quick Google search is where I came up with a lot of these figures. But people talk about, she said that Texas is losing its lands faster than any other state. And this will give you some ideas. From 2017 to 2022, 17,700 farms and ranches were lost in Texas, which was a 7% decrease. And that equates to about 1.8 million acres of land that were lost. And if you do the math on that, that's about 1,200 acres a day that's lost to new subdivisions going put in, new stores, whatever you want to call it. But it's farm and ranch land that's being converted, and once it gets converted, it's almost impossible. You don't see anybody buying subdivisions and bulldozing all the houses and trying to put it back into native prairies. It's not going to happen. So you're losing that much land, and that really hits home with me because that's about the size of our ranch. And so, I think when you go to bed at night, they're one of Fall Creek Ranch. It's real horrible. And another way to look at it, I also did the math on it, and an acre is just barely more than a football field. And so you're losing a football field every minute. And we started this talk at 2:00. By the time I'm done with this talk, you'll have lost about another 45 acres, or 45 football fields will be turned from farmland into housing. Average size of a farm and ranch in Texas is about 463 acres. And that number's kind of, I don't want to say skewed, it's the average, but there's some places you go out to West Texas, there's ranches that are thousands and thousands of acres. And then you go around other areas and there might be places that are 50 acres or 100 acres, but they really kind of classify to be a ranch or qualify as a ranch. Google says you need to have at least 40 to 100 acres is what they consider to be a ranch to, I guess, make some sort of profit out. I mean, if you've got 5 acres, and there's a lot of people that have 5 acres and they call it the Smith Ranch or whatever, and that's fine, but that's more of a ranchette, not a real working ranch. Another thing that the information I found is it's really hard to figure out not only the size of the ranch. We talked about 450-ish acres is the average size, but the average value today of what these ranches are worth. And across Texas, for an average, it came out to be $4,700 an acre. Well, and that figure is also somewhat skewed. If you go out to some of these big ranches that we talked about out in West Texas that are thousands and thousands of acres, the average price out there is going anywhere from $600 to $2,000 an acre. Whereas if you move back east this way or towards around San Antonio, DFW, Austin, there's places that are going for $100,000 an acre and up. I mean, some that might be right close to downtown DFW. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't go for $1 million an acre. If you've got, I mean, if you had 40 acres and it was right next to skyscrapers and stuff, that's probably what that land is worth. And, I talked a little bit about in the video that, what the value of the video that they did is the value of land. And, talking about the whole talk up here is why we have conservation easements and why do we need them? Well, it's because of land fragmentation. And so we get back to, well, what's causing land fragmentation? And it's part of it is the value of the places. When you start figuring out what the average ranch size is and how much they're worth, unless somebody's heart is really tied to that property, those dollar signs in their head is what's going to end up happening. They're going to say, man, I would never have to work another day if I sold, mom and dad are gone. We could sell the ranch. We could move to Hawaii or move wherever, and we could just do whatever we want for the rest of our days. And that is very appealing to a lot of people, especially if you didn't grow up on the place. I feel like if you can raise your kids on the place, or if you grew up on the place or you live on the place and work it every day, there's something about that ties you to that land more than somebody that might live in Fort Worth or something and has some money and they've got a weekend place that they go out to the ranch and they go hunting occasionally, or they might have their buddies out, but they don't necessarily live on that ranch and work it. It's just an asset to them. But for me, it's my home. And going back to the conservation easements, I've noticed that not everybody, but a lot of people that put conservation easements on their place, it's those type of people that live on the place, work the place, and consider it their home. I mean, mom and dad, our ranch is about 1,400 acres, and I look at it just like somebody that lives in Pecan that has an acre and a half. We just have a little bit bigger backyard than what you do, and but it's just my home, and I don't know how to get that point across, but yeah, somebody that just grows up on it cares a lot more about it. And going back to land fragmentation, if you don't have some kids that are involved in the ranch and want to be there and care about it, they're going to be the ones that see those dollar signs at the end of the day when you're gone and want to sell it. And so that's part of the land fragmentation, and it goes back to that. Another part is estate taxes. So in 2025, right now, each spouse can leave approximately $14 million to their children without having any additional estate tax. So that's roughly $28 million per couple that can leave it to their heirs without it being taxed. So, but let's say you go out to West Texas and you've got one of these giant ranches, and we're talking about fragmentation and land getting chopped up. They might not even want to sell their heirs might not even want to sell the property. Maybe there's a 20,000 acre ranch out there and say it's worth $30 million, and the kids want to continue running that ranch. So they've got a $30 million ranch. Mom and dad croak. They can leave $28 million if they don't have any other money in the bank or anything. That's just the value of the land. They can leave $28 million to their kids, but there's still a $2 million extra allotment. The ranch that's got appraised. They're going to appraise it. It's going to be $30 million ranch. So you've got a $2 million excess that is not covered. Well, Uncle Sam's going to want 40% of that $2 million. And so that's just if it's 30 million. That's if it's $2 million over the 28 million. What about if it's a $40 million ranch? He's going to want 40% of that $12 million. And so that's one way the land starts getting cut up and fragmented. That's if the kids want to keep the ranch. And so most people don't have, 40% of the $1 million or $2 million or whatever the excess amount is laying around. And so then that creates it where, okay, we want to keep the ranch. We're going to have to cut off this part over here, sell it to be able to pay for that estate tax. That's one thing going against farmers and ranchers. Another thing, when we started, mom and dad and I and my brother have done some estate planning and estate taxes, but one of the first things that happened when we went into a estate planner is he said, unfortunately, farmers and ranchers don't like to plan for estate planning. And it's just kind of a common thing. And what happens is a lot of them say, oh, we'll worry about that later. It always gets pushed back to the back burner. I've got too much. It's farmers and ranchers. They work 60 to 80 hours a week. During harvest time, it's not uncommon for farmers to have to work 80 hours a week. They're going to work daylight till dark and probably turn lights on the combine because they've got to get that crop in. And so a lot of them don't have a lot of time to do extra estate planning. They say, well, I don't have time today to go sit in the office with a lawyer and talk about it. We'll do that another time. So it gets put off to the back burner. And so a lot of times it never gets done. And then, well, the inevitable happens and one of the spouses dies. And if you have not done any estate planning, and we talked about the $14 million, and I'm not a CPA or anything like that, but one of the critical parts of estate planning, if you have a big estate, is when one spouse dies, you need to take that $14 million allotment and get it gifted over into your heirs' names within a certain, I can't remember if it's 90 days or 120. If you don't do that before then, and you say, okay, I'll give you this example. Say my mom and dad are here and say one of them passed away. Say my mom passes away and my dad we don't go down to the wherever you have to go and get it all the paperwork done to get the transferred over, and we say, oh, we'll do that in 6 months. Well, that time goes by and you didn't do that, then you just lost out on that $14 million because a certain amount of time goes by. Then 5 years down the road, dad passes away. We don't have $28 million to give anymore. Now we just have dad's $14 million because we didn't take care of business and get the other $14 million when mom passed away, if that makes sense. So there's one thing, there's another thing going against you. It's not being able to plan. So anybody that has a farm or ranch or a large estate, I highly recommend going and doing some estate planning and not waiting to just let your kids figure it out whenever you're gone. That's the worst thing you can do. Another thing going against it, I talked about sometimes the kids want to continue to work on the ranch and sometimes they don't. Well, I just told you about how many hours you're working. That a lot of the average hours is 60 hours a week that farmers and ranchers are working. And so you think, oh man, that they're working that many hours, man, they must be making a ton of money. And that's not the case at all. You know, a lot of times they're barely scraping by, trying to scrounge every penny they can to get a tractor repaired or something like that. And it's a tough life. It's not all roses and it's a lot of long hours and you don't get paid very much for doing it. And so that's another thing that goes against it is unless those kids were grown up there and have that desire in their heart to continue farming and ranching, that's another thing going against you. They already know that piece of property is worth a lot of money. Well, now I'm going to have to work long hours and hardly get paid. Why would I want to do that? Why not have another job and we could sell this place? So that's another thing going against you. Another thing I considered is I started Googling and looking around and trying to figure out what all's causing land fragmentation, what's hurting farmers and ranchers. And I came up with some prices that kind of really eye-opening. You have corn, wheat, some of these commodities that farmers grow. And I pulled up some figures. Some of them are from the 70s, some of them from the 90s. In 1975, a bushel of corn sold for roughly $3 a bushel. In 2025, the same bushel of corn sells for $4.40 a bushel. So you're looking at a 50-year span. The price of corn, when the farmer goes and sells it, he's getting about $1.40 more a bushel over the last 50 years than what he did in 1970. I was going to talk a little bit about cattle. Cattle's kind of stayed on that same trend until recently. We've had some all-time highs with cattle, and it's from a rancher standpoint, it's been great. The last year we've actually been able to make some money and put some money away and save some. But traditionally, cattle prices have kind of followed the same as any other commodity. It's just the cattle prices, the price of beef has kind of stayed pretty flat and very similar to any corn or wheat, that kind of type deal. So you're still farming, ranching, selling your product, but what about you're still getting the same amount or roughly just a little bit more for the output that you're producing, but what about all the inputs that go into it? And so here's some interesting figures for you. I'll start with one of the biggest ones is diesel fuel. In 1990, a gallon of diesel was $1.10 a gallon. And if you go down to the pump today, it's about $3.50 a gallon. So it's over triple what it used to be back, just that's not the 70s, that's just from 1990s. Talked a little bit about the price of labor. In 1990, minimum wage was $3.80. Now it's $7.25. So the price of labor has doubled. The price of diesel fuel, your fuel has tripled. Then we get into fertilizer. Fertilizer is kind of a volatile, strange bird. There's a lot of things that affect the price of it. But in 2007, you could go buy a ton of urea fertilizer to put on your farm. It was $280 a ton. From 2007, $280 a ton to 2008, it went from $280 a ton to $815 a ton. And then talking about how volatile it is, it went to $815, but by the end of 2008 in December, it was back down to $250 a ton. 2021, it was $1,000 a ton, and it's currently about $600 to $700 a ton. In 1970, you could go buy a ton of urea fertilizer for $30 a ton. So $30 a ton in 1970, $700 a ton today. That's over a 10 times increase in price. Then we'll get into equipment. Everybody in this room knows what new price of cars and trucks and that kind of stuff. Everything's just skyrocketed. Equipment since 1990, the average price of a new tractor has risen 275%. Between 2017 and 2023, cars and trucks increased by 22%. Tractors increased 50 to 60%. So if you're in here thinking, man, am I going to bite the bullet and bite the bullet and buy a new car? Think about how the farmer's thinking. Am I going to bite the bullet and be able to buy a new tractor? And you're still not even comparing apples to apples, because a new car or truck might cost $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Prices of tractors cost $500,000. A new combine, I'd hate to guess what they cost. They're probably over $1 million. Cotton strippers are probably over $1 million. So that's another thing that's going against the farmer and rancher is, there's a lot of commodities are a strange deal. A farmer and rancher is growing beef, or they're growing corn, or they're growing wheat. They're going to grow this and they're going to take it to the market, and the market's going to give them whatever the market decides. It's unlike anything else. Toyota's not making cars and taking them down here and hoping what they get. They're going to put a price tag on it. This is what I want for my car. Farmers and ranchers can't do that. They have to take whatever the market is. And like I said, from 1970 to now, you look at the price of a bushel of corn, they're not getting the increase like they should, like all their inputs have increased. And so the only way that they've been able to survive is by getting better at what they're doing. And I talked about diesel fuel equipment. I'm not going to get into seed prices. One of the things, the seeds that they're putting into the ground, part of those prices have increased too, but it's partly because they've used some new science to be able to create GMO corn or GMO whatever. And, that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother debate, whether it's good or bad for us. But one thing about it, it has produced a higher volume, a higher yield. They can get a higher yield on that same acreage that they did in 1970. Here's some figures for this. Let's see here. Average corn yield, this was back in the 1930s, was 25 to 30 bushels an acre. And now the average corn yield in 2024 is 179 bushels per acre. So you went from 25 bushels to 179 bushels per acre. So I didn't do the math on what percentage that is, but it's a huge jump. And that's what farmers and ranchers are great at doing, is being able to implement and being able to use what they have to get higher yields because we're not making any less people. Our world population is just increasing exponentially, and you've got 2% of the populations are farmers and ranchers that are feeding the rest of the 98% of the people. They've got to figure out a way to increase yields just to be able to produce enough food for everybody to survive. And one of the only ways to do that is with genetically modified corn or whatever, where you can get higher yields. I'm not going to get into whether it's good for us or bad for us or any of that kind of stuff. But if we were still making 30 bushels to the acre like we were back in 30s and 40s, we'd probably all be starving to death. I'm gonna go. So I've talked about land fragmentation, that kind of stuff. How do you stop land fragmentation? Well, that's where a conservation easement can come into play. And I've already talked about the TALT is the foundation that we used on our family ranch. TALT has helped since its beginning. It started. TALT was founded in 2007, and we've protected almost 320,000 acres now. We've helped over 84 families put easements on their place. There's $82 million in ecosystem services, and that's an ecosystem service is basically the value that they put. How do you put a value on clean air, clean water, that type of carbon sequestration, that kind of deal is how you come up with ecosystem services. TALT lands conserve over 86.6 billion gallons of water annually. Earlier we talked about the price of seed and fertilizer, and the price of water has gone up. I mean, most of the time, most farmers and ranchers have a well on their place that they're watering livestock or watering crops and that kind of stuff. But that's one of the deals they've become more efficient at. They used to maybe flood irrigate. Now they do drip system irrigate just on the crops themselves. So they use less water than what they have to. Our ranch is 1,400 acres. And we talk about, everybody in here already knows that water's the next big issue, or already not the next one. It's already here. We're already staring it in the face. And at Fall Creek Ranch, I told you I live on the ranch. My parents live on the ranch. My brother lives on the ranch. None of us have a green yard at our house. We don't have sprinkler systems. We don't turn on the sprinkler system and it comes on in the morning and make sure that our St. Augustine is green or anything like that. If it rains, our yards are green. If it doesn't rain, they're brown and crispy. That's how it is. And I really think Texas probably ought to implement some of that across the board for everybody. I mean, I've got a friend of mine, Deborah and Emery Birdwell Clark, have a big ranch up in Henrietta, Texas. And the city next to them is running out of water. And they've got, I forget, it's a big place, several thousand acres. Well, they are trying to, and Deborah and Emery have a conservation easement on their place, but the city of Wichita Falls is coming and taking by eminent domain, or trying to. They're fighting tooth and nail to prevent it, but it'll probably happen. But they want to put a big reservoir on their place to be able to feed the city of Wichita Falls. And I've been to Deborah and Emery's ranch, and it's the same thing. They don't have a big green yard. They do it just like we do at Fall Creek Ranch. And and how do you think that makes Deborah Clark feel when she has to drive into Wichita Falls to go get groceries, and she drives through a neighborhood, and she has to drive through a neighborhood that's got green lawns lined on both sides of the street, but they're running out of water and they're having to take her land to build a reservoir? It's total baloney.
Can they take that? Can they take that land by eminent domain?
They can. So unfortunately, putting a conservation easement on a property does not protect you from eminent domain. Right. And it might help if let's say there's a new road going in, and here's a piece of property that has here's a piece of property that has a conservation easement on it, and here's one that doesn't. More than likely, they will try to first use the piece of property that does not have a easement on it, conservation easement. But if there's no other route or no other option, yes, they can still take it by eminent domain, unfortunately. Yep, I totally agree. Another thing that I put on here is easements give wildlife a permanent home. Conservation easements give wildlife a permanent home. We all people in general talk about whether conservation easements are good or bad or indifferent or whatever. You can argue and bicker about all that you want. Well, wildlife doesn't have a voice in the game. They still live here. They still live with us. We have to commingle with them, but they can't raise their hand and say, "Hey, we're pro easement or we're anti easement." But I guarantee you, every one of them, if they had a voice, would say, "Absolutely, we want to protect this because it's our home too." I just wanted to throw that in there because that's a big plus for me. We run cattle on the ranch, and we could run a lot more cattle than what we do, and we could make a higher profit. But we run our cattle herd pretty low just in order to maintain better grasses and better habitat for wildlife. I'm going to talk a little bit about the easements. There's two types of easements. There's what's called a donated easement, and then there's a purchased easement. Mom and Dad did a donated easement on our place. And so basically how a donated easement will work is, I'm going to give you an example, and this necessarily isn't our place, but just to show you how it works. So say you've got a 1,000-acre piece of property, and let's say it's worth $10,000 an acre. That's going to make that piece of property from an appraiser's value worth $10 million on paper. We have this piece of property. We're going to go sell it. It's worth $10 million right now. We're going to say, well, we're not going to sell it. We want to put a conservation easement on it. So what a conservation easement does is it protects it from ever being chopped up and subdivided. And so you've got a $10 million piece of property. We're going to put a conservation easement on it. They're going to come up, when you put a conservation easement on it, they come up with a percentage value of what a conservation easement is going to be worth. And it varies of where in location your piece of property is. If you've got a piece of property that is out in Van Horn, West Texas, and you want to put a conservation easement on it, I'm all for you putting a conservation easement on it. But there's probably not a huge risk or threat of a housing development going in on that ranch immediately. If you've got the same piece of property, the same 1,000 acres, but it's right next to DFW or right outside the city of Austin, you could put it on the market tomorrow. You could sell it, and a developer would buy it and say, "All right, let's start chopping it up and putting houses on it." There's not a developer that's going to go out in Van Horn and say, "Yep, I'm going to invest some money out here and put a development," and he'd go broke. But you can make a ton of money doing it if you're right outside of a city. And so the percentage of what your easement is worth varies of how close you are or how big a threat it is of being developed, from anywhere from probably 5% out at Van Horn up to 50%. I think Talt has done one easement that was over 50%. But let's say this 1,000 acres is somewhat close to a city, but not right on the back door. And so we're going to put a 30% easement value on it. And so basically you take this 1,000 acres, it's worth $10 million. We're going to put a conservation easement on it. they're gonna put a 30% easement value on it. So that's gonna make the conservation easement worth $3 million. And now the piece of property with the easement on it is worth $7 million. So you've got a piece of property without an easement that's worth $10 million, and you've got a piece of property with the easement on it that's worth $7 million, which makes your conservation easement value $3 million. So you do that, and then you take the conservation easement of, if you've done a donated easement, you take that value, your $3 million, and from a tax incentive, you can, for the next 15 years, you can write off part of your gross income up to that $3 million. So if you, if you made $100,000 for the next 15 years, you could write off $100,000 until you reach that $3 million or whatever your easement value is. If you had a bigger ranch and you had a bigger percentage and you had a $10 million easement value, for the next 15 years, you could write it off up to $10 million. So now we talked about a donated easement and also a donated easement is kind of a guaranteed easement. You're donating it. You're not trying to get paid for it. The process for that is a little quicker than going through a purchased easement. And there's some costs with it. Purchase easement or a donated easement, it's going to usually cost $40,000 to $60,000 out of the landowner's pocket to do an easement on it. And those costs are, a title search, your survey, your appraisal, your legal fees, that kind of stuff. So I talked about donated easement. What's the flip side? What is a purchased easement? And a purchase easement sounds better. It sounds like, hey, they're going to pay me something to put my ranch into a conservation easement. And that's what it is. That's the case. But the problem is, it's a supply and demand issue. There's a lot of places that are a lot of people that have a ranch, and we have a list of people that want to put their place into a conservation easement, but they don't want to donate it. They want to do a purchase easement where they'll get paid to do it. And the problem with that, and let me back up for a minute. Let me give you another example on a purchase easement. How much am I going to get paid to put this on? So I did another example, and this one's a little different. Say this place say you got a 100-acre place, and you want to do a purchase easement on it. And your 100-acre place, you get an appraisal, and it's worth $10,000 an acre. So you got $1 million piece of property that's 100 acres. You want to do a purchase easement? Let's say that this 100-acre place is not out in Van Horn. Let's say it's very close, right outside the Metroplex. So you're going to put, instead of a 30% or a 5%, they're going to give you one of the max. They're going to give you a 50% evaluation on the easement. So you've got a $1 million piece of property that's 100 acres. They're going to come in. They're going to put a 50% value on it. So now you had 100 acres that was worth $1 million. We're going to put a purchased easement on it. Now that piece of property is worth $500,000, and the conservation easement value is worth $500,000. So what TALT will do, if you qualify, they will pay up to 50% of the value of the easement. So technically, theoretically, you will get $250,000 to put your 100 acres that's right next to DFW into a conservation easement. And so say, man, that sounds great. Sign me up. Let's do it. Well, it's not that quick and easy. I just talked about the supply and demand. There's a long list of people that want to do a conservation easement, purchased easement, but there's a big number of people that want to do it. Well, what about where's the money coming from that pays all these conservation easements? Well, there's not that much money. There's a pot of money, and it all comes from different entities. The ASEP, which is Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, puts some money in a pot to help buy them. The Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, helps put money in a pot. The RCCP, Regional Conservation Program, does. Texas Parks and Wildlife puts money in the pot every other year. And then the rest of the money comes from private donors or private foundations that want to do it. And so there's not enough money to go around to do all of these easements. And so there is all of the purchase easement. Anybody that wants to do a donated easement, you can get a donated easement done, no problem. But a purchase easement, like I said, it's a supply and demand, and there's a criteria list. If somebody wants to do a purchase easement out in Van Horn, you can get on the list, but there's not a big threat of it happening. So you're probably going to be sitting on the list for a long time before somebody ever comes knocking on your door and says, "Hey, we're ready to do that easement. Are you still willing to do it?" If you've got a piece of property that somebody else has already put a conservation easement on, say mom and dad did a donated easement, so we've got a conservation easement on Fall Creek Ranch. If there's another place that's adjacent to Fall Creek Ranch that wants to do a conservation easement and make that chunk of land bigger, they go up the list on being able to get a purchased easement. The closer you are to a place, if you have 150 acres and it's right outside of DFW, yeah, it's going to be worth a lot of money, but it's very high threat of being developed. That moves you up higher on the list. And so that's how a purchased easement works. That's pretty much it. We've done out at the ranch, we do a ag field day for some of the elementary school from time to time, but we don't, there's not maybe we should have a station about conservation easements, but we don't. We just talk about, Dr. Billy Tills comes out and helps me do getting the creek and seine for invertebrates and fish and that kind of stuff. We have that kind of station. We've had a bee. Kathy Crocker's come out and helped us do a bee station before. And then I'll get somebody at the Farm Bureau to we have a trailer out to talk about farming and cotton gins and that kind of stuff. But we've done some programs like that for the elementary. We've done all kinds of programs for the church at Anchor Fellowship that I've been involved in, for Stonewater Church in the past. We've done events out there for them. Optimist Club, we do banquets for. But we do a lot of that kind of stuff. I brought these flyers, and anybody that wants one of these, the end of this month, we are doing a 5K, 10K, and half marathon called Run for the Range. And this is the first year Kristen and I kind of came up with the idea to try to help Talt raise some more money that in turn could pay somebody for an easement. And so all the proceeds and all the donations will go to Talt for the Run for the Range. But it's supposed to be, like I said, it's our first one that we've done. And if it's successful, we may do it every year. But I've been blazing trails on the ranch for these people that want to go run like crazy, and we're gonna have a live band and some music and food and that kind of stuff. But if 125 people are signed up for it right now. But if anybody knows, if y'all want to come out and you don't even have to participate. We have what's called a couch conservationist. If you don't want to run, you can still sign up for it and come out and enjoy some food and music and cheer the crazy ones on that are running. But anyway, that's my spill on conservation easements. Does anybody have any questions? Kathy?
Do you or Talt or anyone, can you tell if there's an awareness among our government, whether it's at a state level or national area, of how dire this is, and that they need to maybe step in and offer some concessions?
It would be nice. I know Talt, Chad Ellis, and some other people on our board have met with different legislators and trying to get some things passed. We've talked about it would be really nice if any land that had conservation easements would be tax exempt, would be great. I mean, you look at what we're already giving up for the community. I mean, just knowing that you're gonna be able to drive to DFW and still see some open land is a benefit. The clean air, the clean water, the money that we've given up to what we could have had if we wanted to sell it and chop it up like everybody else. It'd be really nice to be able to not have to worry. I mean, one of my worries right now is, yeah, we put a conservation easement on the place and it brought the value of the place down, but I don't have that option if the estate tax gets, right now it's $14 million per person, but You know, when Biden was in administration, there was talk about moving it back down to $1 million or $2 million per spouse. If that were to happen to us, man, we'd be up the creek without a paddle type deal. And now that there's a conservation easement on it, I don't have the option to say, hey, let's sell 100 acres over here to be able to keep the rest of the ranch. I just have to sell the whole ranch, I guess. But it'd be a great tool for the government to come in, and that'd be how you get that done, I guess you just keep lobbying and cross your fingers. Yes, ma'am.
Do you, well, maybe it's been answered. Do you have a network of people, ranchers, that, that communicate with each other and find out about all these things?
About
This conservation and all that?
It-
Cause I mean, I know the Miles Ranch people.
Right.
I don't know that they're part of it.
Yeah, no, I know Diane Miles, and I don't know, I know that they're aware that you can do conservation easements, but I'm not speaking for them, but I mean, they've got the 377 and the bypass that goes right through them. You know, if they wanted to do one, they would certainly qualify to probably do one. But as far as a network of people, I don't know. Conservation easements are a relatively new concept or idea. Talk's been around since 2007, but there was a lot of misconception too about conservation easements. A lot of people thought, hey, you're giving it over, you're deeding it to the government is going to have it, or you're going to put a conservation easement now that's open to the public. They can come out and do. And there are different types of conservation easements, and TALT is not the only one that does them. There's other the TLC Texas they did the one on. Yep. Okay. Nature Conservancy does them. There's several other entities that do them, but as far as how you make the public aware that they even exist, that I don't know. That's part of the reason I'm doing this run is just try to make awareness of them.
But, I've lived here for like 37 years.
Yep.
Not as long as you have, but, just driving into Fort Worth. Oh my gosh, it's like pretty soon, all shingles, no trees, no leaves.
Yep.
And all those houses to the west, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can find the right people or the right people that own that property, I mean, it depends whether or not they see dollar signs or not. I mean, if they want to.
Of course.
Yep.
Eating up the water,
Oh yeah.
it's a bad situation,
It is.
as you know.
Well, Leah.
About a year ago, I went out to, around Athens, Texas.
Okay.
And, it's an old mine. They were mining something out there. And a family bought it and wants to restore, make it regenerative and restore the land. And the woman out there is a former teacher.
Okay.
And so she started something called Learning Gardens, where she brings children out and teaches, skills there on the land.
Yep.
And I just got something from them, and they're going to be doing a program, and it's called Skills to Inherit Property.
Okay.
And so when you were talking about, being raised on the ranch, and Joe just passed all of those skills on to you. You were raised with those skills, right? But I wonder about families whose children have gone out off to do other things.
Yeah.
Comes time, parents pass away, what do we do with the land? Well, gosh, I don't know how to run cattle, or I don't know how to make a garden, or I don't know how to do this.
Right.
This program that they are participating in is teaching people the skills that they need to inherit property.
There you go. That's a great program.
So if you would be interested, I'd be glad to give you that information. She said they're gonna be doing something 4 times a year.
Okay.
The one that's coming up in March is teaching people how to grow food and preserve the food.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the future ones are going to do, but wouldn't it be great if we could start teaching people those skills that they need, like how to build a barn or how to house a horse.
And that's another deal. That's probably another deal I could add to the list is, you've got a certain group of people. You've got 2% of the people population of farmers and ranchers. And then if their kids or their heirs don't want to do it, it's very, very difficult for somebody that has no ties to agriculture to say, hey, I'm gonna get out of school and I want to be a farmer and rancher, but I don't have a mom and dad that have a farm. Well, good luck going and trying to buy some acreage
That's
to barely scratch. I mean, I just told you what the land is worth. That's almost physically impossible to say, I'm gonna go buy 500 acres, the average size of a ranch and farm and start, okay, I'm gonna go spend $5 million on buying a ranch and then I'm gonna make $30,000 a year selling cows off of it. Good luck with that. So unless you have somebody that has the farm or ranch that already has the land, that's pretty much your only hope. And when you've only got 2% of that, if those heirs aren't interested, man, and you got developers chomping at the bits to put houses on it, you got a lot of stuff going against you for sure.
But I think if we could teach those skills to people,
Yep.
maybe those heirs or whoever, then it wouldn't be so difficult for them to imagine themselves on this beautiful piece of property doing some of these things.
Yep. I'll talk a little bit about our neighbor, a good friend of mine, Murray Randall, passed away recently. And he didn't protect his ranch through TALT or a conservation easement, but he did get it protected. And it's gonna go to Texas Tech University. And hopefully there's some talk about making a research center and that kind of stuff out there that will hopefully help some students learn about agriculture and farming and ranching. So that's at least he got it protected where another development's not going to come in there anytime soon anyway. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was wondering, I knew I guess your Aunt Jean.
Yep.
Okay, she lived down the street from me and, all that, but, I remember when the gas wells went in, are they still pretty active or did they shut them down?
We still have some gas wells on the property. They don't make the amount of gas that they did when they first came in, but we still have pumpers and that kind of stuff coming down the roads and that kind of stuff. That's another thing I probably should have talked about in the presentation is if you have a piece of property that's got a conservation easement and it doesn't already have oil and gas production, if you put it in a conservation easement, it's going to be very hard to develop those minerals. In our case, we already had the minerals developed. We already had pad sites that were designated where they had drilled and have a well. And so in the future, if there's ever any new exploration or any new technology where they can get different minerals out or different gas, as long as we utilize those pad sites that are already on the ranch, we can do that. But if we did not already have those, then the easement would prevent us from doing that.
Does that include wind and solar also?
Yeah, oh yeah, solar's out of the question. There's no solar farms going on any conservation easements.
You can't do that.
Nope. Yes, sir.
Mr. Langdon, my name is Ron Sutton. I'm actually campaigning to serve Hood County as your next county judge.
Okay.
I saw a little advertisement in the newspaper, and it was interest to me and Barbara. Barbara is an ex-farmer.
Okay.
I've never lived on a farm, but always dealt with livestock. But in Hood County, we have some corporations that are trying their dead level best to come in and use up our water.
Yep.
AMUD is actually considering selling water to a corporation to supply a power plant.
Yep.
We don't need that to happen, and we have a lot of data centers.
Yep.
That are wanting to come into Hood County and also Somerville.
Yep.
City of Granbury is going to be having a meeting on it tomorrow night, and those are wasteful. They waste our environment, our beautiful landscape. We don't have room for them in here, in our county.
Yep.
And when I read about your presentation, I thought, well, maybe there's some connection there with your initiative to help all of the other citizens push back against these things.
Right.
Because they're not wanting to come here to be good neighbors,
Right.
I guarantee you.
They all live in Dallas or Arlington or something like
Yeah.
that, or maybe out of state even.
Even out of state, and foreign money investors.
Yep.
I mean, if these data centers were that great, why don't they build them next to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they use our natural resources and they pollute our natural resources. And, every citizen in our county needs to be concerned about that, whether you're on a farm or whether you're in town.
Right.
But every corner, and I appreciate, I've learned so much from you today. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And if there's anything that you see some synergies between pushing back against data centers and Bitcoin mining and more power plants. We don't
Right.
need more power plants. What we need is more water.
Yeah.
More surface water. It's a fact that all of Hood County is a watershed. All of the water, all the rainfall goes to the Brazos, the Paluxy, and Lake Granbury. And those industries that I just mentioned will pollute all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think we should have them or need them or whatever, but I don't know the avenue to go against fighting them. I mean, Texas has been a big proponent of private property rights
Yes.
and yeah, I don't know. Maybe I guess the avenue to go is probably through Austin to try to get some legislation passed to do
And
that.
the local pushback has been great.
Right.
Several groups are pushing back.
We
And
we went to the first, they had a meeting about it the other day up here at the AMUD facility and we didn't show up late, we showed up on time, but
Couldn't get in.
the building held 50 people and 400 people showed up and people were looking in the windows trying to see. I don't know if that was intentional or not of planning to have it in that small of a facility or not, but there were a lot more people that were against it there, I think, than for it for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And
The only person for it was the developer. I actually spoke at that meeting,
okay,
because you nailed it. Water is not going to be the number one issue. It is the number one
Right.
issue. And people pushing back, and you're right. We all believe in owners' rights, the liberty of the individual to own land, and that's a huge deal. But these land investors come in and buy the land, and then what we can push back again is what they do to develop that land.
right. Yep. Sir,
Just, Harold Granick, just comment that when you do the conservation easement, you can't subdivide the property to sell it. That's important. Also, in the comment that Mr. Sutton is running for county judge and his attitude is good. So remember that when you're going with them.
any other questions? Well, thanks for everybody for showing up. We don't leave these flyers right here. If anybody has a business or wants to take one for friends or whatever, they're right there. For this?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It's on Facebook. If you go to Fall Creek Ranch, we've been sharing it. And if you go to Texas Ag Land Trust has one too. And you take one of those with you. It's got a QR code and that kind of stuff on it.
Good to see you. I know.